let's start. Good evening, welcome, and I'm really happy to be back. In case you were here last time, then you know my name is Sandeep. I'm an organization development and a people development facilitator, coach, mentor, speaker, and writer. I work with businesses, leaders, and individuals and help them to bring in growth and success in their lives through my bespoke change management strategies, spiritual, emotional, rational alignment, and mind training techniques. Last week, we talked about organizational wellness. And we discussed that organization wellness is much larger than the employee wellness. And today we are going to talk about team wellness, process to build successful teams. Now, this is a logical extension of last time because an organization cannot function without teams. And in today's topic, there are three words. One is the team, one is wellness, and one is the process to build successful teams. So let's start with what is a team. Okay, guys, now this is going to be highly interactive. So just keep putting your comments in the chat box. If you have a question, please put it there. Tell me one thing. Does a group of people constitute a team? Yes or no? Vivan says no. Shaurya says no. Anyone else? Ankit says no, sir. Okay. Why does it not constitute a team? You see, a team, they need to work towards a similar goal. Fantastic, fantastic, Aditya. Yes, a group of people, when they come together, they align with each other, they bond with each other, and they have a common goal, a common purpose. They tend to collaborate, not only cooperate, they stand by each other. Then they form a team, right? And the word team has got the definition which I really like. T standing for together, E for every time, A for achieve, and M for more. So team stands for together, every time, achieve more. Now, for this definition of together, every time, achieve more, this group has to be well. Now, what does wellness means? You see, unfortunately, if you do a Google search on team wellness, again, you'll be thrown up a lot of strategies and techniques, which are focusing on the employee wellness. Employees being well, or the team members being well, physically, emotionally, spiritually, cognitively, mentally. Yes, this is a very important aspect. Shaurya, you have sent me a question. Do you think managing a remote team has become harder? I'll take up this question at the end, right? Okay. Now, the employee wellness, the employees are not the sum total of the team. They might be the physical sum total, because if the team has to achieve more together, then there has to be something much more than the employees, which constitutes the team. And what is that? That is the culture of the organization, or the culture in which the team works, the education, the competencies, the skills, the attitudes, self-awareness, how they interact with each other. Why? Because if these things are not aligned, these things are not possible, then these brilliant team members, are more like an army which is highly skilled, highly trained, but without the ammunition, without the guns, without the tanks, without the infrastructure, and without the command. Like an army needs first to train people and then give them the necessary equipments and the infrastructure to be able to fight a successful war. Similarly, a team needs to be equipped with the culture, competencies, leadership, attitudes, skills, thought processes, self awareness, so that they can gel and take it forward. So, in this background, if we look at what is team wellness is, this is the way I look at it, preparing and equipping team members with necessary skills, attitude, and thinking so that they operate at their optimal best in all situations. And in simple terms, we can say preparing and equipping team members to succeed together. Any comments on this definition? Team wellness means preparing and equipping team members to succeed together. Okay, now the question is, okay, thank you, Aditya. Okay, now the question is, we have a group of people who are aligned, who have come together. How do you prepare them? How do you create that wellness in in that group so that together, every time, they achieve more? Now, together, the first thing is together. Now let's see what makes people come together. People come together when they have a common purpose. They come together when their values match. They come together when there's appreciation. They come together when their personal values match with the organization or the team values. They come together when they got a sense of contribution. And the simplest way is look into yourself. Don't you think a team can also be for non-quantitative goals? Yes, I'll be talking of quantitative and non-quantitative, both qualities and goals. Okay, now just look into yourself. In what circumstances and what would prompt you to be a part of the team and give your best? The culture, the competencies, your worth, the way you are accepted in the team, the way people talk to you, all these things. Okay. Now, this is the thing. Now, for every time, what do you require? You require that culture. And now, this is a brilliant question. How do you build a good team culture in the early days? Well, I'll just come to that. I'll come to that. Okay. Now, every time, when we say every time, all times are not going to be equal. But at the same time, you've got to be motivated, you've got to be hopeful, you've got to be alert, self-aware. As you're going forward, you're going ups and downs, through the ups and downs of times and the situations. Now, these things come in through a solid leadership, a leader who does not reprimand you, or actually reprimand is a wrong word, who who inspires you, who influences you, who supports you, who helps you to grow, who gives you the freedom. Because a person is found to be performing his or her best when these three psychological needs are met. One is autonomy. You give freedom to the other person to work, to deliver. And the moment you start micromanaging that person, you take away that freedom, the productivity of that person falls. Competencies. You put the right person in the right place. A person is a doctor, and you put him in an engineering setup, obviously, he or she will not be able to function. And connectedness. And the biggest motivator, as we'll see going forward, is the connectedness. How do the employees interact with each other? What is the culture? Achieve. Now, when do you achieve? To achieve, you got to be skilled, competency, there have to be reference points, you got to have hope, you got to be motivated, and more. More means consistency. In every stage, you are going ahead, ahead, ahead. And again, this motivation comes from the culture, set up by the organization for the team to keep going forward. And a very simple thing is appreciate and be appreciated. Who does not like appreciation? There are various ways now to see beyond this thing, that what are the factors we get into play while creating the team wellness. Now, I'll say let's assume the path of, or let's assume and study what do the high performing teams do differently. You see, if a team is high performing and very successful, vis-a-vis the average of the other teams, then obviously there must be something which these teams are doing differently. And what are those things which they're doing differently? Number one, we have got into the culture of mails, sending emails, sending WhatsApp messages, and the culture of picking up the phone and speaking directly has virtually gone out. So these high-performing teams are found to pick up the phone, speak to the person directly, and when they speak to the person directly, better relationships are formed, and when better relationships are formed, they are more open and more accepting of what the other person is saying. Number two, they make their meetings more strategic. Now, when I say more strategic, they come prepared for the meeting. They have a specific agenda for the meeting. And when they come prepared for the meeting and they have an agenda, so as a result, the team members, as a result, the team members also, share amongst themselves that what have you done? What have you achieved? This is what I have done. This is what I have achieved. And yes, and this culture is very much there in Amazon, in Google. Google goes to the extent of saying that, okay, guys, they got a coffee, they've got some program, which I believe is called the coffee shop or something like that, in which they go and talk. And they just talk without any hierarchy, and they talk on everything and anything. Number two, they got a system where if any department is facing some problem, the person would go and stick the problem on the notice board, and anyone from any department can provide a solution for that. So that has created a lot of openness within the organization. Number three, people bond over non-work issues. You see, from a manager's point of view, the manager might say, what is this nonsense? You are not working, you are talking of movies or races or some personal matters. But, this over the cooler talks or the general talks which people have over a cigarette or a cup of coffee, tend to bring them together. And when they bring people together, the productivity of the team goes up. And these are what I'm talking about is all scientifically established research by established facts. The next is they give and receive appreciation freely. My simple question is, if I appreciate you and you appreciate me, don't you think we'll come closer? Appreciation is a big binder, and then they are more authentic at work. A lot of people, they tend to, what should I say? They suffer from the imposter syndrome. They try to post something which they are not. Okay, they try to hide, they try to conceal. But people in high performing teams, successful teams, they're authentic. They'll say, okay, I could not do it, I could not do it, I've done it, I've done it. I got stuck over here, I got stuck over here. Now, while this is true as per research, as per psychology, as per the growing trend, still managers who are from the old school of thought still believe that bringing a bunch of highly talented people, a group of experienced people, and putting them together is sufficient to create good, successful teams and high performance teams. But Google, which did a research for 5 years, finally concluded that successful teams were less about who is on the team. It is more about how the team worked together. You see, and this is very important for the simple reason when you collaborate. You see, you are going beyond your ego. You are thinking in terms of we. And if you do not collaborate, then you are only cooperating. And in cooperation, you only think in terms of I. What will I get? And that is a big dampener. You know, if you don't see results coming your way, or you are not being rewarded the way you perceive to be rewarded. But yes, the moment you think in terms of we, the entire thought process changes. And what did the Google research throw up? The Google research threw up 6 factors, which go in constructing and developing high performing teams or successful teams, or creating that ecosystem of team wellness. Number 1, clear goals and plans. Now, having clear goals and plans is very essential, because the number of people are there, they're working in their own domain, they're working in their own setup, but then these clear goals and plans give them the path on which they got to walk. Ultimately, where they have to dovetail their effort. So clear goals and plans are very essential. Number 2, all high-performing teams have strong leaderships. Now, when I say strong leadership, they are leaders who are actually facilitators. They are guides, they are mentors, they are coaches. They're showing the torch and encouraging people to walk on that path. They're not micromanaging. And because these guys know that autonomy is a very important part, giving autonomy is very essential if you want the other person to do his or her best. But yes, giving autonomy does not mean that there are no reins. The plans and the goals set the boundaries within which the person needs to work. The third is members of high-performing teams, work in a culture where they not only do their own work, but they also help other people to finish their work. So they share everything. And a very important thing is open communication. Now, when I say open communication, this also includes feedback. A number of times, we are scared to give our views. Why? Because we feel that the boss or the other people might not react favorably to it. We feel that we might be made fun of, or we feel that it could be wrong, or it could be any other reason. So now open communication helps people. The culture of open communication helps people to speak their mind, to share their ideas. I don't know whether you guys have seen that movie Border. Was it Border or Lakshya? One of them. Where the war is going on, and these people, the senior officers, they are trying to figure out from the sounds coming that how many cannons the enemy has. While all these well-educated, trained people say the enemy has got one cannon, but a cook of the battalion who's standing there says, "Sir, I believe they've got two cannons." Now, one set of officers say, "You are a cook, keep quiet." But then the brigadier says, "No, let's hear him out." And the cook says that, "Look, the cannons take 30 seconds to be loaded and fired after the first shot. And if you really measure the sound between the two shots, it is 20 seconds, which is impossible. So this means there are two cannons." And this observation of the cook, or the suggestion of the cook, changed the entire fate of the war. So a suggestion could come from any level, any place. So open communication, enables that. And the organizations which have an open communication are more motivated, are more innovative, more creative. The employee engagement is much more. The employees are happier, resulting into higher productivity. The next is constructive resolution of conflicts. Now, where people are going to work, conflict is bound to happen. Question is, how do you resolve it? Now, when you are in a culture of open communication, so whenever there's a conflict, you sit down, you hear each other, you rationalize, you think and understand each other and come to a conclusion. And where there's no open communication, this conflict also tends to grow rather being resolved. And lastly, feel direct contribution to the organization. Now, every team is working for the organization. It is like, so everyone needs to understand what is their contribution and where do they stand. But let's take the analogy of a car. If the engine says, "Hey, I'm the most powerful one, and without me, nothing will happen." That is true. Nothing is going to happen without the engine. But at the same time, the engine might be running very efficiently, but without the wheels, the car will not move. And even if the engine and the wheels are moving good, without the steering, the car will not remain on the road. And okay, now say the engine, the wheels, and the steering are functioning properly. The brakes, without the brakes, there'll be an accident. So what I'm trying to say, each team has got a role in the overall scenario or the overall action plan of the organization. Each team member needs to understand where they stand on that map so that they feel committed to the organization and they know what they are contributing to the organization. Now, all these things don't happen overnight. We might rationalize, we might think. And so what is required? It requires time, and it requires development and nurturing key characteristics, behaviors, and best practices. Now, again, if we go through a list of what should be done, we'll get a huge list, right? But rather than going through the huge list like inclusive thinking, diversity, respect and trust, personal excellence, healthy conflict, adaptability, ability to surmount challenges, pride in the company, let's look at the factors which determine the culture. First one is have clear goals. Like someone had asked about the culture, right? Have clear goals and tie the goals of the team with the goals of the organization. This will provide a clear path to the team to contribute and move forward. Understand how the team fits into the overall organization. I know I'm fitting over here. These are the teams dependent on me, and I'm dependent on so and so. So what's going to happen for my own sake? I'm going to have cordial relationships with the teams on whom I'm dependent and with the teams who are dependent on me. And once this gets into a chain reaction sort of a thing, the entire organization and all the teams within the organization land up having cordial relationships. Then it's very essential that the roles and responsibilities of the team members is defined. When the roles and responsibilities are not defined, usually what happens, a lot of work falls in the gap. And when the work falls in the gap, or you can say between two tables, that hampers the growth of the organization and the performance of the team. Clear and respectful communication. The things we say in anger can also be said sternly with respect. Again, I'll say, look into yourself. Whenever someone doesn't give you respect, what is your reaction? Don't you feel angry? Don't you feel agitated? You don't want to talk to that person. So the communication has to be open, respectful, constructive. Now, in an organization, priorities keep on changing, and those priorities impact the priorities of the team. So the team needs to be agile and manage their work and deadlines based on the priorities of the organization, which is impacting, is through by managing their own priorities. Trust and respect is a very big part. You got to trust each other, you got to respect each other. Celebrate successes together, acknowledge people who have contributed, and practice continuous learning. And like I said, it takes time to build teams. So, you could have a simple 3-stage formula or a 3-point formula. Develop shared purpose so that people tend to bind. Number 2, have a culture of clear and non-threatening communication, because people work together only through communication. And the communication does not need to be threatening, because whenever there's a threat, our brain works in a very different way. It closes down our thought process. In case of a threat, it starts feeling pain and it just wants to run away. And third is a culture of investing time and energy in the development of yourself and your colleagues within the team. So this was a snapshot view of what is team wellness all about and how can we go about it. Now, okay, let me take the questions. Aditya said, okay, Shaurya said, do you think managing a remote team has become harder? Shaurya, yes, it is harder. And this requires an internal change in the way you react. So self-awareness has become very essential. Earlier, people were in front, but today, people are not in front. So you need to connect to people at the heart level, not at the intellectual level. So in a way, it is harder, but at the same time, if you get into self-awareness, you start practicing how to connect with people, your team members, at the human level, at the heart level, probably the productivity goes up many, many, many notches. Don't you think a team can also be for non-quantitative goals? Yes. Quantitative and qualitative. Both things coexist. Nothing is absolutely quantitative. This is the 20th century philosophy when human values were divorced from business decisions. Business decisions were taken only purely on data, quantitative dimensions. But yes, now the qualitative dimensions, that's the human dimensions, the spiritual dimensions, everything is coming into play. And a few years back, if you recall, even the There was an economist, I'm forgetting his name, who had got the Nobel Prize for bringing this value quotient into economics, the human value quotient. How do you build a good team culture in the early days? Well, the team culture is built, it's a two-way traffic. The leader got to be careful and behave in the manner in which I just said, like have clear goals, give out clear goals. Communication is very important. Tell everyone what they are doing and why they are doing and what is their importance in the organization. Uh, he or she has to trust people, respect people. In turn, they respect and they trust him. He needs he need not be a slave driver. He needs to inspire people. He needs to motivate people. He needs to show the torch. He needs to, a number of times what happens, when you run a startup on the early phases, the team does something good, there's a big success. The manager or the leader tends to take all the credit. No, that is a big no-no. Share the credit with your team. Say you have been called on stage to get a prize, okay, or to get an award. On stage, take the names of your team members or call a few of them on stage so that the sense of co-belonging, the sense of co-creation, the sense of co-achievement penetrates into the team and it becomes the culture of the team. And lastly, constantly invest in people, in helping people, in helping them to better their skills, in helping them to increase their knowledge. So these are the things, if the leader is mindful about, automatically the culture starts coming in. Vivan says the biggest culture is when a company goes through a change. Yes, Vivan, that is a big challenge for the simple reason we are hardwired to resist any change. Now, when you are going through a change, this open and free communication, the trust and faith, the overall organization, where do you fit in? If all these things are present, then the acceptance of the change becomes much, much better and much simpler and much less challenging. Because then you're opening, you're discussing, you're telling people why are you changing and what the benefits would be. To get people to understand the change in requirements and goals. Okay, Vivan, now let me give you an example. In November, I did a workshop for a leading infrastructure debt company. There were 35 people in the organization. They got a 10,000 crores debts. They got book debts of 10,000 crores and they want to go up to 60,000 crores, a big, big, big order and a big challenge. Now, the point was, how do you bring that energy so that people are enthusiastic to accept this challenge and the change which would be required in the way people think, in the way people function, in the way the management deals with its people. So, what was done was the principles of co-creation, co-ownership was applied. We had a session, people were divided in teams. They were said, okay, these are the values or these are your attributes, right? To reach that place, what attributes would be required? So each team came up with their own attributes. They presented to the other people. Then all the attributes presented were clubbed together. And then they were told, okay, now pick up the 10 most important attributes which you feel are necessary to move from 10,000 crores to 60,000 crores. Then all the 35 people worked together and came out with a list, consensus list. Okay, now when they came out with that consensus list, now three things happened. Number one, since they were party to the entire process of determining the attributes, they got the sense of being participative, that the organization is listening to them. They felt important. Number two, they automatically took responsibility because they are the guys who suggested it. And number three, to prove themselves right, they said, we have to go and work. As a result, in a week, 10 days time, the energy changed totally. To give you another example, I asked them, okay, what are the qualities of your organization or the values of your organization or the success factors of your organization, or what are the things which have made your organization to succeed? So they came out with 10, 15 qualities. Now imagine. Then I said, okay, guys, what are three qualities each one of you brings to office every day? So 3 into 35, we had 105 qualities on the whiteboard. Even after removing the duplicates, we had something like 40 qualities on the whiteboard, vis-a-vis the 10 which they had said. I asked them, okay, if you guys are coming with these qualities, which is the true company, the one you perceived with 10 or 15 qualities, or the one over here, if all of us join hands together, and which we have to join hands because no one can run the company alone, everyone said the second one, that is the 40 qualities. So in developing culture, right, you got to work this way with people, you got to involve them. You got to help them to feel that they are important. So these are small things which you got to do. You got to handle people with sensitivity. And this is the way the culture comes in. And there's no shortcut to building a culture. There's no one fixed way of building a culture. One size does not fit all. So keeping the broad parameters, keeping the broad factors, keeping in mind what you want to achieve. Because now in an organization, there are different teams, right? And even within one vertical, there are, say, 2, 3 teams. The requirements of the 2, 3 teams would be different. One team might require that 10 factors need to be built in, the other might require only 5 factors to be built in. So you got to be slightly mindful of the requirements, create a program, make it participative, involve people in it, share the credit, share the success, share all the allocates, everything with them. And yes, the culture starts coming in. And the biggest thing is non-threatening communication, trust, empathy, respect. That changes the entire working environment of any organization. So guys, this was a sort of a stadium view of the entire thing. If you have any further questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. And have I been able to answer your questions? What books do you recommend for culture? Okay, now this is a very, Vivan, honestly, you see, when it comes to culture, today the situation has become complex because you've got to get the brain science into it, the neuroscience into it. So books by David Rock are good on this aspect. You also got to bring in cognitive science and the growth mindset and the fixed minds, the mindset books. So what's that lady's name? Dew, Dr. Dew. who got the theory of growth mindset into play. That is required. And you got to understand, more than all these factors, how does human beings behave? How do they react? And the biggest lab and the most potent lab is you yourself. If you start looking inside yourself, why did I react this way when I should not have reacted? Why did I feel bad when so and so said this thing? Because at the end of the day, all of us are built alike. All of us react similarly. So I'll put it this way. I'm not taking commerce, economics, the hard skills, all those factors. Well, they are very important. We are talking of culture. Yes, for building a culture, you got to understand what is life, what is human life, how do people react and behave. David Rock is something good. His books, then the fixed mindset plus your growth mindset, Dr. Dweck. So these are certain books, which will help you to understand how cultures can be built. And like I said, one size does not fit all. So what might be very good for A corporation might not be good for B corporation. Now, Shaurya says culture always comes from the top. Yes and no, Shaurya. When it comes from the top, it is much simpler. But let me put it this way, emotions, you see, emotions play a very important role in culture, and emotions are contagious. Emotions are contagious. If you are good, right, initially people might resist you or make fun of you, but ultimately they give in. A small example, you are sitting in a room, you are very depressed, a friend comes and all of a sudden your emotions change. Why? Because your friend has brought in a lot of energy with him. At the same time, now you are full of energy. Another friend comes who is very depressed, and you also become depressed with that person. Why? Because that person has come in with negative energy. And since you did not resist the negative energy, you are depressed. So emotions are very contagious. But yes, I agree with you. Culture comes from the top. When it comes from the top, it is much simpler. It is much simpler to implement it, and people accept it more easily. But at the same time, culture is also built from the bottom up, where when the teams start practicing a particular culture, the teams start performing very well, they come in the notice of the seniors, and the seniors start adopting that culture. Any other question? So guys, if there's no question, then should we call it a day today? And again, I'll be here next week, same time, same day. And we would be talking about leading with empathy. That's another very interesting topic, because these days you must be hearing, and you see, organization was the first one, team is the second one. Now within the team, empathy is the third one. So it's a logical extension of the first topic. All the three are nested into each other in creating an organization. So guys, thank you very much. A link for the next one would be given by Rian and the company. You'll get it. So, okay, folks, thank you very much for being here. Namaste and take care. So I'm closing the meeting.